plenty things they come for hope where we say they are alive for all Nigerians, because all of us no go wrong come out for our country. Plenty things where we say we they carry come this hour. Now Tinubu's file where we say LBI don't release, and we don't decode them, come put them into transcript, video evidence where we say it go show the things where FBI don't block come out, and we won't bring them as it in take be the subject of this very FBI files where come out. Even when they talk say they go come out Tinubu's name, we they see say the subject na Bola Tinubu et al. And the Bola Tinubu where we know na the president of Nigeria. So not we bring them like this, make some people no talk say na obedient family TV they call president out. This one na waiting come out from ABI document. As soon as see them, na their logo a carry come out. So no be we they call them out this time. Now FBI carry their name, carry name put for inside. So today we won't bring plenty things where we say it don't dey for public domain. We don't already check the 200 pages where they release against the 500 pages where they talk say they go carry come every month. So the one where they release, now that very one, we don't break them down, make everybody for understand what's in there for inside, because the pages they too plenty. And the people will be said and go do all the talk for inside here, and to show the video evidence where David Undein by himself don't put together. I get Angel for studio and I get Princess for studio.
Good day, my well-meaning Nigerians, my lovely and intelligent, obedient worldwide. Welcome. Tell your neighbor, say hope day, but not in our leaders or politicians, but in God. Happy new month. Una know say the FBI file where would they wait? It don't land. Pata pata. Una go see say Lee Edward wey be Tinubu's drug gang. He dey bribe judges and police officers for Chicago for that time. Una fit join the dots together. Una go know why I talk am. Welcome. Make we discuss.
Greetings to all well-meaning Nigerians and fellow obedient worldwide. Welcome back to Hope Alive. As the FBI files is out, a lot of people might ask, of what use is this FBI files now? I will say, these FBI files of records of the president it's more like authenticating or validating everything that has been said all along for the past months, weeks, and so on. And I would say that Nigeria deserves better than this. Well, join us as we discuss.
Yes, whether you they join us for Zoom or you they join us for our comment section, make you for like and give thumbs up, make other people know say we they bring the video evidence as David Undein don't already put them together, where they very explanatory, where cover the whole thing, where these very pages carry come. So, and as a Princess and Angel take talk, this something the validation of all the things that have been said. Now in this document they show now validation. And as we see say the cover letter carry Bola Tinubu as the subject, and everybody where they there then call them it all. But we know what it portends for Nigeria as having Tinubu with a criminal background as the president of Nigeria. It poses significant dangers and challenges to the country. Notably, among them, we can talk about vulnerability to blackmail. I mean, he will be susceptible to blackmail and coercion, which can compromise national security and decision making. This vulnerability is exactly what the US is capitalizing on with the FBI, CIA, DEA, and other federal agencies that has the record. The second one is undermining the rule of law. He would undermine the rule of law and disregard to the judicial process and court order. His cartel will be held to a different standard of accountability, and he will be untouchable. Nigerians should raise up for that to come. Ultimately, the dangers associated with this fight that just came out, and this very Tinubu's presidency is complex, far-reaching consequences for the country's global reputation and overall well-meaning of the Nigerian people. With that one, we go show all the other things so we say they follow for the video where David Hundeyin don't put together, where summarize the whole thing. But back in the studio, we see say, as Princess start this very in talk, make you just give us your brief understanding of the distance. As all of us don't look the transcript where we say the page is plenty, we scroll to the extent we say chai to bring this thing out, they plenty. Give us your own just 1 minute of what your thoughts are.
Yes, I think for us to be able to understand fully this FBI files that was released, you need to have your affidavit beside you. The affidavit that was given by, what's his name?
Kevin Moss.
Exactly. You have to keep that affidavit beside you. That's one of the things that will help you to understand what you'll be watching later on after this. Now, I want to skip and go towards the part where Moez, there's the man called Moez Akande, he's more like their leader. Do you understand? Kind of. So when he came back to Nigeria after to do a business sort of, he handed the business now, the drug stuff, the trafficking and all, over to someone called Abiodun Agbale, if I'm pronouncing his will correctly. Yes. Now, when he handed it over to him, the guy now trying to maybe do what he knows how to do best and impress his boss or something like that. Fortunately or unfortunately for him, sold drugs to an FBI agent. And that was what hit him butt low because they caught him and they arrested him. And now, arresting him now made them ask him several questions because you're not the only one working on this. Definitely the people that are working with you. So they now, you know how FBI work. You know this kind of thing where a certain amount of money is entering your account. They work with IRS. They work with their different agencies in US. And once they notice a such amount of money entering your account, they will notify these agencies and they will start tracking you. So I'm pretty sure that's probably the reasons why these FBI people were now tracking these people. And they caught him. Now, as they now caught him, they gave him this offer of releasing his sentence for him to, and that was what made him call out the names, called out Lee Edwards and other people that were with him. Do you understand? And with that, the FBI proceeded to Lee Edwards' house, and what happened. I
think the investigation has been ongoing for years because this was happening around 1993. But what we saw from the FBI files is it tracked down back to like 1990. That is when the investigation. And the IRS themselves, which is like the revenue people, they have been tracking money from the banks. But the FBI is doing their own investigation. Both of them, on different, covert operation. It was actually, like you said, on a sting operation that very thing actually happened. Kevin Moss is from the IRS, but he was actually comparing notes even with the people who were the FBI people. That was how this thing. But let's even take a listen because it's not. Let's take one of the David Hundeyin's tweet where he put up the banner where FBI said they were a group, that their organization that was supplying Lee Edwards, like Angel said, were supplying it from Nigeria. That was a gang from Nigeria, you understand me? And if we can see, he said, okay, let's even take a look at what David Hundeyin had to say here. He said, despite directly mentioning Bola Tinubu only once, like we have shown, the first tranche of the redacted FBI files has enough to categorically confirm the 1993 IRS investigation linking. That is that Kevin Moss that you and Angel were referring to. And he said his associates Abiodun Agbere and Moez Adeboyega Kande to heroin trafficking in Chicago. Now he said, well done. When we look at the banner, that is the banner that David attached, that is coming from the 200 pages, a cutout of that very page, which we said to add here. He said this investigation was initiated on March 16, 1990. You see what I was talking about. And subject Edwards is the head of the white heroin trafficking organization based in Gary, Indiana. You understand? Now, they talked about the organization because the person they are talking about that is heading it is more of in distribution, as in distribution. So the distribution aspect of it is what they do in that very aspect. But where the Nigerian gang that is referenced here, they are the ones importing it into the US, and they identify that Bola Tinubu's address was a drop-off point where the white heroin is being dropped. You understand? So when we get to that very point, we see where they reference at the top bottom of this very particular this thing. It is that way. So Angel, while this thing is coming up, let's have your intake, because we have this video evidence that we want people. The video evidence is actually from David Hundeyin, and we want people to again to kind of get themselves to understand these 200 pages. They need to, instead of reading all the pages, but to understand it, they listen to this very video evidence that David Hundeyin has put out there, so that they'll come. So before we get to that very video, let's take you.
Yeah, just like Princess was saying, when Abiodun Agbele led the police people to Lee Edward's house, on sighting them, Lee Edward shot at them. Even at that, they didn't even mind. They arrested him. They arrested the Edward. And you people need to know that this Lee Edward used to earn $15,000 to $20,000 a day, every day, my people. If you calculate that thing in a week, you are getting 105,000 US dollars. And in a month, over 400,000 US dollars. One person. And you know that thing, where it is. Even the Lee Edward is still in prison up till today. And my people, you know how obedience can work. They can even trace Lee Edward to that prison and get more facts for us. Just like we told you people yesterday, files are coming out. And truly, truly, it did come out. Because yes, our time difference will not allow them that yesterday. But you see, God is on our side. Yes, we are moving forward.
Yes, and explicit that it is the Obedient Family TV is where you can come and get the information that is authentic. You understand? Because we do our own investigation, and we go deep into what has been said to bring them out. Everywhere yesterday was of the opinion that ABI was never bringing out any of this information. Yes. They had all sorts of headline across board, and they were saying that, wow, the court has actually thrown out, they were jubilating, and all sorts of manner of things. As a matter of fact, producer, I want you to project what Ononuga, that information and strategies to President Bola Tinubu, where he tweeted yesterday, day before yesterday, about the court matter. You understand? Mm-hmm. They were not believing that anything was actually going to come out. So you see this. Bayo Ononuga is an SA to President Tinubu, and this is what he has to say. He said, LBI gives Atiku and P2B deadly blow. That's what he said. Now, he's associating President Tinubu to this particular criminal record. I'm putting that on record for people to understand this. Now, let me read what he said. He said, on a that saw losers, Atiku Abubakar was ranting in Abuja about the trashing of his appeal in the Supreme Court. The FBI and other U.S. agencies dealt him another devastating blow. In a response to the emergency motion of Aaron Greenspan, their contractor in Washington, D.C., attorneys for the agencies and the U.S. Justice Department said the FBI never promised to release any document on President Tinubu. This clarification debunked the false news circulated earlier in the social media space by one David Hundeyin, who practices a brand of investigative journalism according to his own confession by stealth, as if journalism is the same as working for DSS or CIA. In the desperation of these conspirators, they shot themselves in the leg by filing their emergency motion, which was challenged by Tinubu's lawyers. That counter move effectively disrupted the conspiracy. Now, FBI and other agencies have now said the emergency motion and the case arising from it effectively meant a stay of action over the earlier court order. Let me even end it there. He said it's a stay of court action over the order. So their understanding of what transpired in the quest for Aaron Greenspan to get these things out before the Supreme Court matter, their own is that it has gone down. That is not going to happen. But they are mistaken. So the people that were jubilating that yesterday we called the wheelers, they are now in comatose. They are now in slumber because it has disappointed them. LBI has released without, yes, they removed so much part of what Tinubu played a part there, but they inevitably made Tinubu a subject of their release by positioning Tinubu's name at the top and mentioning Tinubu to be Bola Tinubu et al. Means Bola Tinubu and every other person that is involved. Let's get to David Hundeyin. There is a tweet that David Hundeyin did, and where he explained that it never ended here. He explained explicitly that the court can still order because they have motions in court. He said that the court can also ask FBI to continue to put up Bola Tinubu's name inside of those the acted one, because this one they said is just the one for October, which they promised 500 pages, but they were only able to release this 200. To 200. So it was shown earlier in the screen what he put up, but I'm just bringing us to understand that the court on its own, whether today or tomorrow, can still direct FBI to include Bola Tinubu's name in all of this. Because what they promised originally was not they are going to remove Bola Tinubu's name. But this came as a shock 2 days ago when they said that they were not going to include his name. However, thanks to FBI, because they have been able to include Bola Tinubu et al. And that has given us the impetus, the validation that whatever is coming out from here that concerns Tinubu, and why we can mention Tinubu is because of this. So as we are going through all of this, I want us to, take a deep breath and then take our time to watch this exclusive that David Hundeyin has dropped a video. And this very video evidence that David Hundeyin dropped is a video that has been there. He has pinned it on his wall for a while. However, for the purposes of what we are bringing to make it short for everybody to understand how this all played together and how Bola Tinubu et al. Conspired, we are going to take that very video again in a different level as a decoded transcript, as a form where we make it simpler for understanding on how this will play out. So before we get into this very video, I want to say the issue of the sorry state of Nigeria, that we call it a state that is already captured, because we can see that the law enforcement is just going after obedience. They don't want everybody to talk again in Nigeria. The present state of Nigeria, where a select few powerful individuals and cartel groups wield disproportionate influence over the country decision-making processes and the institutions for their personal gain, can aptly be described as a case of state capture. The repercussions of the state capture are profound and have far-reaching consequences for the general well-being of the nation and its citizens. Some of these repercussions include: one, we have this systematic and institutionalized corruption that is going on, both in our judiciary, both in our in the executive, both in the legislature. Two, we have a diminished foreign direct investment that is actually diminishing on daily basis. Then we have what we call political instability. The undermined rule of law that is actually happening. Then we have social inequality that all obedience needs to look at and see how we can address that moving forward. We also have what I can call an ineffective governance that does not serve public interest. Ineffective that does not serve public interest. We all know what the prices of food items are right now. We know what we are buying fuels on right now, and the obedience and well-meaning Nigerians need to look at it from this perspective so that we can move forward. So as we can see, despite the economic hardship, Tinubu and his cartels and all the people there are about to spend about 1.5 billion on cars for First Lady's office. And we can see that it's clearly on the screen. So, well, if that is not another big news, I think it's coming from Premium Times. So we have other major news headlines that are reporting all of this. So we are talking about governance. We also need to look at the eroded public trust and disillusionment among the citizens. We also have to look at the damaged international reputation. Damaged international reputation. We also need to look at the brain drain phenomenon that is happening among youths, among the generality of more than 200 million Nigerians. And we need to look at the erosion of internal democracy that is happening. All of these obedience and well-meaning Nigerians need to put their heads together and see how we can be able to move forward. But while we allow you the pleasure of listening to David Hundein's video, the explicit explanation of how this gang criminal organization from Adebuyega Muaz Akande to Abiodun Agbere to all the other people who has conspiracies into all of this. We will show you that video shortly. Please, for your kind pleasure, relax, recline, and take a listen to David Hundein as he explanatorily explains these LBI files, even before it came out. Let's take a listen.
50 million youths into the army and take away from their recruitment source. What they will eat? Cassava, àgbàdo, corn in the morning, yam in the afternoon. It's growing here. You create demand and consumption.
On October 11, 1990, federal agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration knocked on the front door of 460 Taft Place in the city of Gary, Indiana. This city and its 77% African-American population were witnessing explosive growth in one of the only industries guaranteed to boom under such difficult circumstances. 42-year-old Lee Andrew Edwards was one of the entrepreneurs who had found a place in the heroin trafficking business, and by all accounts, he had done very well for himself. With the proceeds from his illegal business, he had bought 2 residential homes, including 460 Taft Place, an apartment building, a liquor store, and a new car, all paid for with cash. Now, according to court records from the United States Court of Appeals 7th Circuit, the DEA agents arrived at the property to execute a search warrant after a 7-month FBI investigation involving Edwards' brother, Jimmy, had implicated him as the narcotics kingpin of Gary. Edwards did not open the door for the agents, who were forced to break into the house. He then fired 3 gunshots at them, to which he surrendered. DEA agents found weapons including a carbine rifle, thousands of dollars in cash, drug prepping equipment including a triple beam scale, and several grams of cocaine and heroin powder in the house. He was later sentenced to life in prison, but not before something about his business operation came to the fore. Federal investigators had determined that Edwards' heroin supply came from a Nigerian drug dealer in Chicago called Abiodun Agbele. Abiodun had earlier agreed to work for the feds in exchange for lighter sentencing, and as part of the plea deal, he revealed everything he knew about the heroin trade in Chicago. Located at the junction of 4 states with a combined population exceeding 27 million at the time, Chicago was a key trafficking hub in the American heroin trade, and as it turned out, the wholesale trade of an especially potent form of heroin from Southeast Asia in 1990 Chicago was controlled by Nigerian criminal gangs. The following excerpt is taken from the January 2001 Illinois Drug Threat Assessment, published by the US Justice Department's National Drug Intelligence Center. Nigerian criminal groups are responsible for wholesale distribution of most of the SEA heroin shipped into Chicago. SEA heroin, which is 80 to 90% pure, is being sold by Nigerian traffickers for $80,000 to $110,000 per kilogram. Wholesalers in Chicago usually sell heroin without cutting it to minimize the handling of the product and their exposure to law enforcement. Agbele himself was no criminal mastermind, however. As he testified under oath, that honor belonged to a man who went by the name of Adegboyega Muiz Akonde, who was apparently his uncle. Shortly after Agbele's arrival in the US, Akonde had taken him under his wing and showed him the ropes of wholesale heroin trafficking. When Akonde returned to Nigeria in mid-1990, Agbele was left in charge of selling regular heroin shipments from Nigeria to Lee Edwards and delivering the profits to his uncle. In the meantime, the Nigerian-led heroin trade in Chicago fed an addiction epidemic that became so bad that it changed local health and law enforcement practices. For the first time, providing addicts with free access to safe syringes and needles to ensure that they did not share them and possibly spread HIV became a core focus of public health policy. In other words, SEA heroin from Nigeria was so potent and addictive that public health policy in Chicago shifted away from trying to make heroin addicts stop using altogether to merely ensuring that they used safely. Now, while all of this is going on, there was an interesting subplot taking place in the background. An accountant living in the Chicago area who worked for Mobil Oil Nigeria with a declared monthly income of $2,400 had just deposited over $1.4 million in the bank. He had no known source of income apart from his day job, but he had become friends with Akonde and Agbele, discovering one key piece of information in the process: drug deals need accountants too. Soon, he will find himself holding and wiring money on behalf of a Nigerian heroin gang in Chicago. Fast forward a little bit to January 1992, and he will find himself the subject of a US federal investigation. Fast forward a bit further in the same year, and he would successfully run for office in Nigeria as a senator for Lagos West. Then another politician, also said to have ties to international drug trafficking, would successfully run for president in Nigeria on a controversial all-Muslim ticket in 1993. The election will be annulled, the politician will be jailed, and ultimately another Nigerian military coup will take place in 1994. This accountant will find himself exiled and working with the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, to unseat a kleptocrat military dictator. Then the dictator would unexpectedly drop dead one day in 1998, followed in quick succession by the jailed politician with the alleged drug links. This accountant would return to Nigeria a hero and successfully run for governor of Lagos in 1999. The kleptocrat dictator's erstwhile bagman, who helped launder over $4 billion, would become the accountant's new best friend, as an erstwhile Chicago drug gang's loader will start his new lifetime mission of capturing Africa's largest subnational economy and turning it into his personal fiefdom. A major political opponent of the accountant would end up strangled to death in his bedroom 10 months to an election which his chosen candidate would go on to win. Said opponent's son would subsequently be offered a cushy job working for that candidate. He would accept the offer. And if you're already struggling to follow this unlikely sequence of events, don't worry, it gets worse. A US district court would seem like an odd place to begin this story, but this is no ordinary story. The main character in this story is an individual whose entire existence is as puzzlingly mysterious as it is loud in public. For at least 30 years, Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been at or near the grinding phase of frontline politics in Nigeria. Yet the peak 1 inch below the surface reveals just how little is actually known about this man, who some say is Nigeria's president in waiting. First of all, there is the age controversy. How old is the man really? What is his real date of birth? Short answer, no one actually knows. Like many Nigerians born into the less than auspicious circumstances that characterize his childhood in Iragbiji in Osun State, southwestern Nigeria, he himself may not even know. Similar controversy exists around what his actual name is. A popular theory is that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is an identity that he transitioned into at some point after moving to Lagos to live with his surrogate mother, Alhaja Abibatu Mogaji. The only thing every version of his life story has in common is that for the first 2 decades or so, he was apparently invisible and unmemorable. There are no childhood friends, there are no classmates, there are no neighbors, there are no colleagues that remember him. Sometime in the mid-1970s, however, he somehow materialized at the international airport in Lagos, holding a passport with a US visa and a one-way ticket to Chicago in hand. From his arrival in Chicago in 1975, his story then becomes easier to track and verify. So what do we know about this guy? We know that he spent 2 years gaining an associate degree at Richard J. Daley College in Chicago. From there, he proceeded on to Chicago State University, where he studied accounting, completing his bachelor's degree in 1979. Subsequently, his story appeared straightforward and prosaic. He got a job as an accountant at Mobil Oil Nigeria Limited in Fairfax, Virginia, got married to Oluremi, went on to have 3 kids with her, after 3 fruitful indiscretions, shall we say. In a 2016 interview with The News, Tinubu claimed that his break into the financial big time came at the Big Four consultancy firm Deloitte, where he supposedly received an $850,000 bonus as a result of his work on a single on-site engagement at the Saudi state-owned oil firm Saudi Aramco. Now, for anyone with even a passing knowledge of corporate consultancy pay, the categorical dishonesty in this claim needs no explanation. For everyone else, here is a current breakdown of the maximum possible amount that a partner, which is the highest attainable position, can realistically expect to earn at Deloitte USA. Bear in mind that the time period in question was sometime in the mid-1980s, so $850,000 adjusted for the roughly 2.74% annual inflation rate over the intervening 37 years comes to about $2.3 million in today's money. And in that he was awarded such a bonus, and he was essentially less than 5 years into his career as an accountant, never mind making partner. Now, while the interview in question contains several other giant fibs, this particular one stands out because it is the first time in the Tinubu story where he himself acknowledges and tries to explain the fact that he once had a lot more money than a simple accountant working a 9-to-5 consultancy job could reasonably account for at that point in his career. And you should keep that in mind because this becomes more important later on in this story. Now, in any case, one doesn't need an economic study or a Glassdoor salary survey to establish that Tinubu was blatantly lying about where the supposed $1.8 million sitting in his account came from. A document whose existence has long been teased and rumored but never quite properly dissected in public domain tells us all that we need to know. This document, which was obtained from the U.S. District Court of the Northern District of Illinois Eastern Division, contains damning information that Tinubu himself has spent the past 30 years trying to suppress, undermine, and ignore. This document contains comprehensive case files of a federal case from July 1993, containing clear and incontrovertible evidence that Bola Tinubu was once, in fact, a bagman, handling and laundering proceeds of heroin trafficking for a Nigerian drug ring in Chicago. Now, this is not the first time that the contents of this document have been reported, but other stories that have tried to report this story have typically not gone into the detail needed to drive home the point that the man who would be Nigeria's next president is, in fact, a drug criminal. Tinubu's vast army of media shills and spokespeople have spun an endless web of narratives explaining why what is written in black and white is all some kind of mistake or mischaracterization or fake news. And one of the most common defenses is what you can see on your screen right now. Taking advantage of a Nigerian knowledge gap that typically misunderstands how US federal investigations work, this kind of narrative has been floating around the Nigerian media space ever since Tinubu became Lagos State Governor in 1999. Now, explaining the efficiency of indictments in the US, H. Michael Steinberg, founder of the Stanbic Colorado criminal defense law firm, says, "What are the chances for a not guilty verdict if a federally charged criminal defendant takes the case to trial? Statistically, not very good. Currently, federal prosecutors tout above a 95% conviction rate. This is primarily due to the fact that most cases never make it to trial. Most defendants end up taking a plea bargain rather than risk a potentially much greater prison sentence which could be dealt them if they actually went to trial and lost." Now, what this means, in other words, is that America's feds are very good at their jobs, and the likelihood of a defendant in a federal case not being convicted is roughly 5%. Basically, not very good chances. So, could Tinubu perhaps have been part of that 5%? And if not, then what happened exactly that prevented a conviction? Among the dozens of documents in the case files, there's a sworn statement by IRS Special Agent Kevin Moss, who personally investigated Bola Tinubu's financial activities in the lead-up to Lee Edwards' arrest. Here, we reunite with our old friends Abiodun Agbele and Adegboyega Moise Akonde as we pick our way through our hero's forbidden past. Now, in the interest of keeping this brief, here's a Cliff Notes version. The U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, Michael Shepard, files a complaint for forfeiture of funds in bank accounts held by Tinubu as they hold proceeds of a heroin distribution organization headed by Adegboyega Moise Akonde. Tinubu's funds represent, and I quote, the proceeds of this operation or property involved in money laundering and the proceeds of narcotics trafficking. Shepard requests that the court adjudge and decree that the funds should be forfeited to the United States. Special Agent Moss has analyzed financial documents including bank statements, money orders, cashier's checks, tax returns, and, I quote, wire transfers of huge amounts of cash generated by individuals who are believed to be members of this heroin distribution organization. And he reaches a professional conclusion that the accounts controlled by Tinubu, and I quote, were involved in financial transactions representing proceeds of drug trafficking. The investigation, which began in 1988, has identified Adegboyega Moise Akonde and his nephew Abiodun Agbele as key figures in the trade and distribution of heroin. The investigation identifies the third individual working with the duo to launder their money as a certain Bola Tinubu. In December 1989, Akonde takes Tinubu to a First Heritage Bank to open an individual money account. On the application, Tinubu gives his address as 7504 South Stewart Avenue, Chicago, which is the same address that Akonde uses as his heroin trap house. Special Agent Moss discovers that Mrs. Oluremi Tinubu has previously opened a joint account at the same bank with Audrey Akonde, Adegboyega Moise Akonde. On January 4, 1990, just 5 days after opening the account, Tinubu deposits $80,000 into it. On a subsequent credit application dated January 6, 1990, Tinubu states that he is an employee of Mobil Oil Nigeria Limited with a total monthly salary of $2,400 and no other sources of income. He gives his address as 7504 South Stewart and lists Akonde as his cousin. Despite earning just $2,400 a month with no other known source of income, bank records from First Heritage Bank show that over the course of 1990 alone, Bola Tinubu goes on to deposit $661,000 into his individual money market account, followed by a further $1,216,500 in 1991. And if you're paying attention, that is roughly equal to the $1.8 million he would later claim he made from Deloitte bonuses and salary deposits. Now, when Special Agent Moss interviews Mobil Oil reps about Tinubu's employment, they confirm that Tinubu works at Mobil Oil Nigeria as a treasurer in a capacity that does not involve transfer or custody of large amounts of money. Moss also discovers that Tinubu has failed to file U.S. income tax returns since 1984. On January 10, 1992, a court order is obtained to freeze some of Tinubu's bank accounts containing the suspected proceeds of heroin trafficking in excess of $1.4 million. On January 13, 1992, during a telephone conversation from Nigeria with Special Agent Moss, Tinubu admits to the agent that he knows Akonde and that he had previously wire transferred $100,000 to Akonde's account in Houston. Further, Tinubu says that the $80,000 he deposited into the First Heritage Bank came from Akonde. Tinubu also reveals that he had additional bank accounts in Fairfax, Virginia and London, UK. Speaking over the telephone with Special Agent Moss on January 14, 1992, Tinubu admits that he knows Agbele and that he met him through Akonde. Tinubu admits that he has associated with Agbele and Akonde in the US and in Nigeria. In this conversation, Tinubu denies having any additional bank accounts in the US. On January 24, 1992, following a seizure warrant to freeze over $500,000 of unexplained funds in Tinubu's Citibank account, Citibank discovers 2 additional bank accounts controlled by Tinubu under the name of Compass Finance and Investment Company Limited. Citibank's account opening KYC records bring up a memorandum of association and articles of organization identifying Akonde and Agbele as directors of Compass Finance and Investment Company Limited. Between January 30 and January 31, 1992, Tinubu suddenly does an about-face and tells US agents that he has never had any business association or financial relationship with Agbele or Akonde. This statement directly contradicts his earlier statements and the documentation from Citibank and First Heritage Bank. Special Agent Moss concludes in his submission that based upon this evidence, there is probable cause to believe that a number of Tinubu's accounts are involved in narcotics transactions. The court agrees and orders the forfeiture on August 18, 1993. Tinubu opts to fight the case, claiming that the money is legitimate and it belongs to one Kafaru Tinubu and his surrogate mother Alaja Habibat Mogaji. Ultimately, he enters into a settlement with the US government on September 15, 1993, agreeing to forfeit $460,000 of the heroin trafficking proceeds to the US government. The balance of roughly $1 million is released to him. Now, why did the US authorities adopt this whole hog and insisting on litigation so as to obtain the full amount? The US Justice Department's guidelines for asset settlements to cases provides the answer to this in plain English. Settlements to forfeit property are encouraged to conserve the resources of both the United States and claimants in situations where justice will be served. In any case, the ascent of General Abacha and his rabid anti-American posturing very quickly led to a shift in US government priorities. Anyone who was on board with Nadeco and promoting democracy in the face of Abacha's fascism suddenly became an ally, even if just a few years before they had contributed to a heroin epidemic on the streets of Chicago. As anyone with some knowledge of the CIA-Contra crack cocaine affair would know, even Uncle Sam can turn a blind eye to drug dealers when they are working in his interests. Also remember, it was the 1990s. The 90s were a crazy time. At the time when Tinubu informed the US authorities that he was a lowly treasurer at Mobile, Nigeria on $2,400 a month, after having apparently been the world's most generously rewarded junior Deloitte accountant, he was doing some decidedly non-lowly things in the background. Now, while working on this story, a bit of research across US land registries threw up a few pearlers like this one from the Land Records Department at Prince George's County in Maryland. Now, on January 20, 1992, barely 10 days after IRS Special Agent Moss made first contact with Tinubu via telephone, Tinubu purchased a 4-bedroom, 3,016 square foot home at 10111 Limestone Court, Potomac, Maryland, for the miserly sum of $450,000, which he paid in full and upfront, by the way, no mortgage. Now, for reference, this is what this property looks like. This was about 10 days before he did his about-face to Agent Moss, denying having had any financial relationship with his heroin trafficking buddies, Agbele and Akonde. Now, the obvious question raised here is one about timing. Was Tinubu attempting to hide money from US authorities by parking it in real estate once he realized that they were onto him? Where did the funds to carry out this transaction even come from at a time when his accounts were being frozen right, left and center? Now, more real estate record searches raise even more questions about several other parts of the known Tinubu story, including his self-characterization as a bedraggled hero of the democratic struggle and the Nadeco movement under General Sani Abacha. Now, in the interview mentioned earlier, he claimed that following Abacha's coup and his eventual exit from Nigeria, that he was forced to live almost like a pauper after the Nigerian government stripped him of all that he had. Describing his weary but triumphant return home from exile, he said, "I had 3 pairs of trousers and 3 jackets. Meanwhile, I had no Victoria Island home to return to. It had been taken over by Abacha. They dispossessed me of the house as well as my office on Saka Tinubu Street, my vehicles and everything else I owned. They claimed they found bombs in it and dispossessed me of it. I was totally cleaned out. I had only 5 shirts, the £2,000 and the jackets." And yet, the Prince George's County Land Records Department would beg to differ, because here was our tragic, impoverished hero of the Nadeco struggle, casually dropping the minor sum of $147,000 in 1995 for a 3-bedroom, 1,668 square foot home at 12625 Hillmead Station Drive, Prince George's County, Maryland. He would go on to trouser a tidy $13,000 in profit when he sold it on just 3 years later. He was at it again in 1997, putting down the modest sum of $491,465 on a 4,558 square foot property at 1708 Parkside Drive, Mitchellville, Maryland. Again, all cash, no mortgage. He'll go on to sell this property in December 2018 for $700,000. What is more, these weird transactions did not end in 1999 or stop with our hero and his wife. Even their two youngest children, Habibat Oyindamola Tinubu and Zainab Abisola Tinubu, got in on the act fairly recently. Aged 32 and 30 respectively, two of the three youngest members of Bola Tinubu's family have managed to escape scrutiny, mostly because the Freedom of Information Act in Nigeria is still much more aspiration than fact. Not so in America, where a plethora of services can pull up all kinds of records including birthdays, criminal convictions, and real estate transactions. Especially real estate transactions. Such as the ones where a 25-year-old with no known employment or source of income was able to pay $2,150,000 in 2014 for a deluxe condo at 55 Berry Street, Brooklyn, New York. Full and upfront cash payment again, no mortgage. Or real estate transactions where the 25-year-old's 22-year-old sister, who was fresh out of music school with no known source of income, was able to pay $2,400,000 in cash to buy a deluxe apartment at 255 Hudson Street, New York, using the 1-inch thick fig leaf that was a company that she herself owned. It appears that Bola Tinubu's good fortune could be genetically transmitted. I mean, what are the odds that the only junior accountant in the world to earn an $850,000 bonus on a single engagement will turn out to have children who can buy luxury real estate in New York for millions of dollars while being unemployed with no known source of income? Not great chances, but here we are. Now, in the course of researching this story, a name that kept coming up repeatedly as a comparison to Nigeria's Teflon Asiwaju was a certain Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, MK Abiola. Now, when the Daily Beast took a stab at this story a few years ago, a tantalizing hint was mentioned in passing about an unimaginable parallel between 1993 and 2023. I reached out to everyone I could think of with some knowledge of the affair. Most declined to speak, citing some unspoken concerns. Only Professor Gary K. Bush, a notable African political risk analyst and one-time professor of African studies at the University of Hawaii, agreed to say his piece. His lengthy comment went as follows. The Nigerian military on the council were adamant that the Babangida government should never allow Abiola to run for office, and told President Babangida so during the aborted runoff primaries before the election. The basis for their concern about Abiola was the information and documentation being circulated in Washington, London, and Lagos of Abiola's alleged ties to the drugs business. The US in particular had expressed its strong opposition to IBB about the candidacy of Abiola as president, not because of his politics or allegations of corruption, but rather for the evidence they felt was correct about Abiola's alleged drugs connections. This issue was raised in the military council on 3 occasions, and Babangida was warned. He refused to take a decision until it was almost too late. US Ambassador Lannon Walker and the British consul visited IBB and warned him about Abiola, but Babangida dithered, which made the impact worse as the polling had begun. When he finally decided to intervene and stop the election, he precipitated the crisis of June 12. His friends in the military supported him but felt let down by IBB's lack of decisiveness. While there was consternation in Nigeria about the ouster of Abiola, the major international partners of Nigeria were not upset or concerned because they knew what the reasons were for the development. So was the 1993 election annulled because of MK Abiola's alleged drug ties? Bola Tinubu, for one, would certainly hope not. Not only does he have very real and proven ties to the drug trade, in addition to explicitly positioning himself as the assumed successor to MKO as the political leader of Nigeria's Yoruba ethnic group, but he has also picked a fellow Muslim as a running mate ahead of next year's election. The only other electoral frontrunner in Nigeria's history to do that was, no prizes for guessing, that guy. Still, if anyone can manage to avoid having this particular bolt of lightning strike twice, it could well be Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the luckiest politician in Africa. I mean, when he needed money to launch a political career in the 90s, he apparently had $1.8 million saved up from bonuses and salary payments as a junior accountant at Deloitte, which obviously was very handy. When his chosen successor as Lagos State Governor faced a near-certain electoral defeat in 2007, the more popular frontrunner coincidentally turned up dead inside his bedroom in Dolphin Estate, Ikoyi, one of the safest neighborhoods in Nigeria. He had been strangled to death. Naturally, the chosen successor then won the election, which was a happy coincidence. When he backed a candidate against the incumbent president in 2015, his good friend Gilbert Chaguri, former kleptomaniac dictator's bagman, happened to have an excellent relationship with US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And she just happened to ignore recommendations from the State Department and the US intelligence services to proscribe Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization, which effectively allowed it to gain critical mass and make the then government of the day even more popular. Naturally, his candidate duly won the election. Very lucky guy. When a former business partner, Dapo Akpara, took him to court over financial impropriety and money laundering at Alpha Beta Consultants, which is basically his little straw into the Lagos State government's treasury, the court became the first court in the history of Lagos State to burn to ashes and have all its files destroyed. The case was never refiled and it's currently being settled out of court, which is, of course, absolutely coincidental and very regrettable. The 1990s were a crazy time, and the 2020s are even crazier.
My people, una don hear am from David Unde. You see why Supreme Court, they can't do kia, can't give us judgment, emergency judgment. But no matter how they try, truth will always prevail. Truth, they like pregnancy. They cannot be hidden forever. Yes, at 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, it must surely come out. Now the truth with this. My people, like, share, subscribe. Tell all the obedient say that FBI file where we they wait since they don't really come out. And then the truth where would they wait for 9 days inside. Even though say they come out Tinubu's name, but the truth is still there inside there. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you. We love you. Like, subscribe. Tell others obedient waiting they happen. We appreciate you. We love you. But God loves you more. Bye for now.